cloud. All right, thanks. Louis, do you want to start introducing yourself?
So me, I am Louis Ponce, a computer engineer since a while now, and I am working with Paul Olivier to build our the Wikibase platform that is used by personal data, and I am an active board member of the My Data Hub of Geneva. And what else? I am an expert in Linux operating system and open source technologies.
Great,
Voilà.
thanks. Simon?
So I work in the web, and now I'm doing, I did a bachelor in international relation, and now I'm in Estonia doing a master in technology governance. And yeah, I know Paul Olivier from different, we meet several times, and I'm interested about the Wikibase approach, not only for the personal data project, but also how we can help in academia to order things a bit.
Yeah. And you're based in Geneva when you're not in Tallinn,
yeah.
right? So that's how
sure.
we met. Alex?
Hi, I'm Alex Bowyer. I'm in Newcastle, UK. I'm a PhD student in digital civics. My particular interest is in people's empowerment through giving people more access to data. And I'm interested in personal data and wiki data because I'm using the GDPR template to generate GDPR requests for participants in an experiment I'm running where people make GDPR requests and then I interview them about that experience.
Great. And you're also involved somehow in My Data as well?
Yeah, I discovered the My Data conference organization last year and went to the conference in Finland and had a great time, made lots of great connections there. So I'm really keen to get more involved in the movement.
Great. And so, yes, all of you here know me, but maybe not people who watch this later. So I'm Paul Doé, I'm based in Geneva. I've started the nonprofit Personal Data IO, which is hosting this call, but I'm also board member of My Data, of which Louis is a member through My Data Geneva, and Alex is a member directly, I think, not affiliated to any local hub. So as a board member, I meet lots of different people involved in My Data, this great community. And it's turning out that it's one of the first community of users of the Personal Data IO Wiki. Questions, anyone? So the first goal was to, well, the goal for today was to talk more about technical issues related to the wiki itself. So it's definitely more of a call for experts. I will share my screen. And there's a lot of options there. Oops, I cannot share my screen directly. Just a second. I have to quit Zoom to be able to share my screen. That is kind of shitty. Are you there with me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So if you go to, yeah, this is not gonna work if I'm not able to share my screen. I think I will have to.
If you cut your video and then you cannot.
No, I think I'll have to quit myself and then join back. Normally the meeting goes on, especially if I grant permission to, okay. So Simon, I'll make you host.
Okay, I don't move.
Yeah, so I'll quit and come back, okay? Just a second, sorry. Your host, Simon.
Okay. Nobody move. We are still.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi crashed on my side. And I think Paul Olivier has a problem, non? Je sais pas trop ce qui se passe, pour être honnête. Oh, Marie-Pierre.
Yeah, just admit it.
Ah, il est de retour. He's back.
Okay, so it looks like vous m'entendez?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Bonjour.
Bonjour, Marie-Pierre, tu veux bien te présenter en anglais, s'il te plaît?
Ok.
Et tout est enregistré et diffusé, donc si tu veux pas, c'est bon aussi.
Pas de souci. So, my name is Marie-Pierre. I'm from Geneva. I am mostly active on Wikipedia in the French speaking and also on Wikidata.
Cool, thank you. So it looks like I'm still streaming and everyone, okay, it worked, guys. Magic, it's really magic. All right, so the agenda. The goal for today, as I said, is a more technical one, really define best practices for working together. The goal is not necessarily to solve the problems, to solve the actual problems we have, but to make sure we know where to find the information we need and we know how to solve it together, meaning we know how to communicate. All right, so this is the first thing I wanted to say, is that the communication channels might seem to be pretty hectic. They're all listed. I think you guys are already involved in a lot of the different things, but the more technical communication channels are listed here at the bottom left. You see there is a Telegram group, there is a WhatsApp group, the discourse forum, and there is a My Data Slack. There's also a Signal group, but you can't have direct invite links on Signal, so I'm not able to put a link directly to Signal here. That Signal group is actually quite important because it's where more of the developers are. And there are quite a few already on that group, but no one is there at the moment, I think, or 1 or 2 people are here in the call. So it might sound like completely crazy to have simultaneously a forum, a Slack group, a WhatsApp, Telegram, etc. But the idea of the wiki is really to get a lot of people together to interact and coming from very different perspectives. So even though this is talking about personal data, this is really about keeping control, keeping privacy. I strongly believe that simultaneously personal data IO should be inclusive and should be leading people gently towards doing things that are safer for them. So that means using a group like WhatsApp to be very inclusive, to welcome many people who know how to use it right away, but maybe progressively shifting the conversations to be moved to safer channels or to more protected or more controlled channels over time. It's also a partitioning that is, I think, wise in the sense that you can split what is more chat and more like interactive with what is more like a frequently asked question type of thing, which is more with knowledge building over time. And these all belong to different places. Like the chat would belong to a chat channels. The question and answers would belong maybe more to a forum, and the consolidated knowledge would belong more to a wiki, maybe. So this whole thing is a bit overwhelming at first in terms of numbers of channels, but I think it actually is the reasonable thing to do, and the difficulty is that it sounds very thin and very spread out at first, but over time it will make more sense as more people become involved. I hope that makes sense, that makes some sense. One more communication channel, which is very important for this call, is the wiki itself. And the wiki is definitely not very well designed, wikis in general, for communications. So I wanted to insist on 2 different ways that are important to communicate. One is this little shortcut that will give you a ping. So everyone is seeing this agenda, right? So this agenda, just to insist, it's a page called community call/05. So you can find this back. So here you have a little template to ping me, which means that if you use it, I'll see an alert in my page when I log in. And I'll even receive an email if I've configured it so that I would receive an email. So if you go over there, whenever someone modifies my talk page or mentions me, then I would receive an email. By the way, just to be clear, if I go over here, I access my user page. right? So this is my own user page, and pretty much every wiki page has two layers. It's kind of like, this is the page, and then this is the meta page where you can start having discussions. So if someone modifies this, I'll get pinged. I'll know about it. Okay, does that make sense? Yes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and then it can
sorry,
get...
how did you get to that user page?
Top right, I have my
got
little
it. Yeah,
picture.
okay.
You should have the same.
Yeah, I see it.
So it can get sometimes a bit messy in knowing who did what.
Paul,
Yes, go ahead, Simon.
perhaps we could install the new talk plugin, no, to make it easier. What do you think?
Yes, it might make sense to make it easier like that. This is more for Louis.
Okay.
Louis is the bottleneck for installing new extensions, and he has not a huge amount of time. So I'm trying to be more strategic in which extension I'm asking him to install. The talk extension should be fairly easy to install, so it shouldn't take too much of his time. But there are some others that I would like him to install that are much more crucial, like quality constraints and things like this that will require more time. So it's about being strategic. But obviously, Simon, you also have quite a bit of skills around wiki installs. So if you guys could work together, that would be awesome. That would remove one of the crucial bottlenecks. Another way to communicate, another important element is to sign what you do, because otherwise it's difficult to know who did what. So if you use 4 tildes like this, that builds a signature automatically for what you just did. Okay, so kind of like as a motivation for the rest of the call and for really understanding that this might really have a real impact over time, and so motivate more technical people to contribute. I want to highlight that there are people reading from this wiki, and in the sense that they're finding value in using the wiki as a reader. And Alex, you already mentioned that your thesis, you're starting to rely on this wiki to produce access requests. And the way you do that is through this little pop-up that will appear on any given page. So if you tell me a random example that you've used recently.
So Amazon UK.
Amazon UK. So if I go to Amazon UK, and you will see that there is a lot of information indexed about Amazon, and a lot of information that is collected by Amazon that Alex has entered with different comments and different information like this. And then this is read by a little pop-up that appears on the top right. Do a GDPR SAR to this controller, and once you click it, it generates basically an email that will make a request. I know that everyone who is currently in this call, in the Zoom call, knows about this, but I'm just saying it so that it's recorded and people who watch this later might benefit from it. You want to add something, Alex? Yes?
Yeah, just add a little context. So that the process I've been doing is I have a number of participants who are about to make GDPR requests to different companies. So I wanted to have a consistent way of generating the GDPR requests. So the process I've been doing is to go through the privacy policy of each company to pull out all the things that they say they store and make sure they have an entry on the wiki, as you just showed, the comment tag next to each one, which may change name, but it's basically the appropriate extract from the privacy policy that where it mentions that thing is collected. So that's why those are there. But those comments in time won't be used in the actual generation of the GDPR request. It's mainly just the list of collected data and also the list of required data gets used as well. So the things that they ask for.
Right. So I had been using it before slightly differently, this comment field. And we still have to figure out what is the best way to do things. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
So this is what, and thank you, Simon, by the way. You seem to be doing the video feed selection, which is great. This I can see it on Twitter. It's good. Continue doing that. So there is this pop-up, and I just want to make it precise how it is introduced so people understand it. There is this thing called common.js, which is a framework. You can read about it also on Wikipedia itself. And that framework is here. So this is where, so it's at this page, and to prepare for later, observe that this is under the MediaWiki namespace at the page common.js. So the JS really means JavaScript. And it launches with this strange command, it launches a specific page called mediawiki.access.js. And when I go there, it launches more JavaScript, of course, which basically detects that this is an instance of, so that's the P3 that it corresponds to, instance of a data controller, and then at some point it will fire a template, which is called menu with the right QID, and this will generate the text, the actual text. Okay, and if I go to template.colon menu, and I know menu is a template because of the double brace here. If I go to template menu, then I know it's a template. Then I'll see some gibberish. I need to see the source actually. And the source tells me, do an ahref, so a link with this text, and this is the link. So now this is iterative, right? So this is generating a mail-to link at this address. So if I go search for that template, I hope you guys can follow my URL bar. Then again, it's iterative, and it says use the mail-to template with, and these vertical bars mean with this series of parameters, right? And one parameter is here, another parameter is here, so that would be the subject line, and that would be the content. Okay, right? So the mail-to will generate the mail-to link. So we could go see now how the mail-to link works. Well, let's do that actually.
Sorry, just before you go off that page, what does the word access correspond to there? Does that correspond to
here
a template as well, or something?
Yet another template, yes. So mail-to, it's going to be, this is pretty clearly going to encode a URL with subject equals blah, body equals that, right? And the one here will refer to the first parameter that is passed to mail-to. So if I go back, the one would correspond to that. Okay, and the 2 would correspond to this, and the 3 would correspond to that. So if I go towards the template mail-to, I see that the first would be here. So that would be a mail-to that email. The subject line would be indeed tied to the second parameter, but URL encoded in the right way. There's a chat match. Oh, who can edit the template? Good question, and I'll get back to this in a second. And the body is URL encode in a specific way of the text body that has been passed. Okay. Are people more or less following this? They could make sense of it over time. So this is actually going to be, this is maybe one that I should go into because it's going to be text. Right, so this is most of the text of the actual requests at the end, except not completely. There is some little parts where something else is done, and that something else is, we have another guest, that something else is that it's going to invoke a module, and that module is called WD. Okay, so now we're jumping yet another level. That module is where you can code a little bit of stuff. So essentially, it would pass here the ID of Amazon UK, right? And say, look for all the values tied to the property P10 and the qualifier P126 and use it in this way, right? So Alex, I think you modified this recently to
Yeah.
remove the use of the qualifier value. This is what we were getting at earlier with a comment. So let's ignore this. But basically, this is just making a list of items tied to that are values of property 10, which is collect, right? And so this is invoking a module called WD. So once again, we jump to another namespace called module. And here we see some code that I basically copied from Wikidata and modified a little bit due to the configuration of this wiki. And this is Lua code. Lua is a programming language used a lot in computer games to enable users to build their own scripts. So it means it's a way to offer users the possibility to code in a safe way because it's like sandboxed. And this is code that goes and basically navigates the database. Okay, and so it goes and fetches all the items that are collected. Okay, so I got a bit deeper than I wanted into this, but are there any questions beyond Marie-Pierre's? Simon?
Perhaps it would be great to have one page on the wiki to then list all those kind of important files that you just show. Like it's on this page almost, you know. But,
yes, there is a lot that is already started. There is some pages that already exist. What I haven't done is categorize them or put them in the right namespace. So it should be in the namespace help, I think. And categorize them, meaning add a category tag so they're all retrievable through this means. So this is definitely an effort that we should be doing, that I should principally be doing so that I enable you guys to use this thing more effectively and to help each other more effectively.
Related to that, I think also guiding through the process where you've got your own custom page and you want to add your own template just for you or you know, just for that page. I think based on what you showed, that what you would do is you'd put some kind of if block in that first place to say, if it's this type of instance, then
that's the perfect lead up to this point here, the next way it could be used. But before that, I need to answer Marie-Pierre's question. So who can edit the template? So it's in the MediaWiki namespace, so it requires quite a bit of privileges at the moment, and it should require quite a bit of privileges in the long term. What we haven't done is atomize the privileges, so try to define like intermediate roles. So at the moment, it's pretty much you need to be either an interface admin or an admin, which some of you might have those rights. I have to look it up. I mean, Louis definitely does, but yeah. So negotiating the rights is something we need to figure out. And I want to be clear. I want to be taking the role of technical host, but have the least ultimate decision making as possible eventually, which is the model that's used by the Wikimedia Foundation, for instance. So short of legal liability, I want this to be as participative as possible, and I think the best way to do that is to be least involved in administrative decisions. This being said, at the moment, this thing only flies if I'm involved, and so on and so on. So yeah, so if you're blocked, in a sense, if you're in good faith, if you're, and I'm assuming everyone is, I believe everyone is at the moment, if you're in good faith and you're blocked by privileges, it means you don't have enough privileges. That's my view at the moment. Now, Alex, you were asking, how do I customize? So the great thing about this is that okay. So Simon, just can you transfer me the host back, Simon? Can't hear you. You're muted.
I think it's done, no? Is why I wanted to double check.
Ah, because I can make you host again. Yes.
Yeah, so it's done, yeah.
Yeah, so Simon will have to leave his signal to me,
Yeah.
but yes. But this is working for me. So it will be recorded, Simon, and hopefully you can make sense of it
Great.
later. So Alex, your question was about your own thing. So the great thing about this CommonJS framework is that everyone sees it, everyone benefits from it, everyone launches CommonJS when they start, right? But actually before that is launched, your own CommonJS is launched, and that is in your namespace. So if I go here, I have my own little things. So if I have, if I modify this, if I remove that comment here, then I will notify myself every single time I load a page that I'm welcome here, right? Because every single time it will launch this little pop-up to welcome me over, okay? And this is where you would introduce similar JavaScript for yourself, just for yourself. And so this is the place where you can basically take the other scripts that you see on the MediaWiki common space, and you can copy them over to your user script. You're muted, Alex.
Sorry, is it JavaScript everywhere except the modules, and the modules are Lua? Is that right?
Well, there is the templating language, there is the JavaScript, and there is the module language. Yes. So the idea is to not touch the module language because no one understands what this does. It's really complex. It's in Lua. It's like unreadable. But to leverage that with the templating and with the JavaScript to improve the interface as much as possible. So my answer to your question would be, eventually, if you want to customize something, you do it in your own JavaScript space, in your user space. But short term, it's more likely that it's the template itself that needs to be improved. Because I took some shortcuts and, you know, all of that stuff. And actually, eventually over time, I think it would make sense to have the template rely on user data itself, like where the user lives. So you would just do some settings in your JavaScript that would populate the memory, if you want, to say, I live in the UK. And then from there, the pop-ups that would pop up would depend on where you live. And you would not see that a way to do a request under Swiss law if that's not applicable to you. But this is actually really subtle, and it will take a little bit of time to get right. Okay, other questions? So this is another tool that is reading is also the gadgets. So the gadgets are basically another layer. I will not go into too much of it, but an example would be quick presets, which would allow you to, if you go to, Amazon UK, if you go there, I think it's active at the moment. No, it's not. I don't fully understand. Oh yeah, maybe it's because I don't have it configured. So now you see how you can activate the gadgets. This is where you activate the gadgets in your preferences. And if I go back there to Amazon UK, reload the page, here I see that quick presets is activated. Right, so this is the JavaScript, and it sits between the CommonJS, which is imposed on everyone, and the user script namespace, which is just for yourself. There's this gadget layer, which is opt-in or opt-out, depending on how it's configured. And in this case, it enhances a little bit the interface. Okay?
I have one question on that.
Yes.
I noticed that appeared and it looks quite useful, but I noticed that if you want to add more than one concern, then after the first one has been added, the box disappears.
Yes, so this is not configured very well, but the really cool thing about quick presets is that the JavaScript is shared, but then you can configure locally, again in your user space, what you want to appear there and how you want it to appear, right? So there is if you want, there is a quick presets configuration, and some of it can be common and some of it can be user space dependent. And so I'm hoping that someone will go into the common configuration, will improve on it, will improve on their side, and then we'll share back with everyone. That's always the idea, right? So we can discuss that, or you can have a look at how it's done on quick presets. But it is useful to help populate. Okay, so remember I was looking at who is reading from the wiki. So quick presets is great because it's clearly like reading from the wiki and building from it an interface to write quicker to the wiki, to contribute more and more easily and better, and because it's already shaping how people will contribute back. So that's very helpful. But another entity that is reading is Le Temps. So Le Temps is a newspaper in Switzerland. Alex, you don't know this probably, but we're launching a collaborative investigation with them where they're asking like readers to make requests. So it's kind of similar to what you're doing, but it's in a journalistic setting rather than an academic setting. And they are reading from this because they've built an interface to ask you data. So if you want to ask, I guess, so they do some filtering, but like Swisscom, they generate essentially the same thing, but it's just that the interface is not a wiki interface, so it's more accessible to people. Okay.
So I guess that means that I have to be quite cautious as I change things because they'll pick up data changes that I make, right?
There is some filtering, and it seems unlikely that you would do changes that would affect them. They don't pull everything.
My companies are coming up in their drop down at the moment, I noticed.
Really?
I say my companies. If you type Amazon UK or something, it comes up.
Right. Yes. So that gets to the point. The point is indeed that we are starting to need an ontology to be able to make sure that everyone is collaborating productively.
Because if their letter and my letter need to be different, we really need to have two separate templates, probably.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that will start to become a need. I think that before we get there, we make it explicit what why you need a different template, because part of the answer might be modularization and basically flow control when using the templating language. Yeah. Right. So to try to figure out exactly. The other thing you might not have thought of is that this pop-up can actually be so it's really like launching a template and making it a pop-up, right? But you could just use the template itself in a wiki page and generate a bunch of links, and your users could be using that directly.
Yeah.
Right? And I can help you do that. So you could have one static page with all the companies you are interested in and the links to make a request. So you don't have to use the pop-up. You don't have to go to each page. If that makes sense to you, and does it make sense to you?
It's probably not so important for me right now because of the process I'm using. I'm basically generating the email for participants and then sending it on to them for them to send. So I don't need that right now.
Okay. Well, the point is you don't need the JavaScript layer. You can just use the templating layer only. And that can be embedded into a wiki page. Mm-hmm. So you can also, maybe what you might be interested in then is the scripts that support the transferring from Le Temps, from where that Le Temps uses to read from the database in order to populate their own thing, because that's what they're doing. They're actually calling explicitly one of the templates.
Okay.
And so in that script, you could be calling a different template.
Right. So they have some JavaScript within the wiki that does that, or they're doing it from somewhere external?
They're doing it from a Jupyter notebook, so Python.
Okay. So
we can discuss this. It seems a bit more custom, so maybe we discuss it separately.
For this call, yeah.
Yeah, so there is a need for an ontology. And just to illustrate, because Simon left the call, these are some questions that Simon had. How do we structure Internet of Things devices? Should we make an item per model, per group of model, for an Amazon Echo, for an Alexa, etc.? One item per services, but what is a service? You know, one that I added is how do we index data controllers, Swiss data controllers? That's relevant to us because the law is different here, and so on. So basically, those questions will constantly have to be negotiated. There is no one right answer. It's only an evolving answer and an answer that will get more and more refined over time. Part of the point is that it needs to move forward in lockstep with the tools that we build on top, right? So as we write, we need to be more and more aware of who is reading from the wiki. And so, you know, in a meeting, when people can't agree on something, usually you create a committee to resolve this. Well, in the wiki space, I guess we create a project. So a project is just a page around this, and then we can structure more work. So if you go into project ontology, here are the questions, and over time we'll refine this. Okay, so I'm just lobbing the ball to, I guess, another call, another set of pages for later. But it's something that we urgently need to decide on. Ontology means that it's just an agreement on a set of terms and their meaning and their relationship. So we'll never agree on everything, but we can try to agree on some things so we can know the relationship. So for instance, some of these pages are indexing companies like Google, or like Facebook, but some of them are indexing products like Google Ads or Facebook page or things like this, right? So to make that distinction is useful, and to know how to express, how to precisely define the relationship between a product and a company, for instance, is quite important, because it allows us to define the data collected by a product on the product page, to define the way to address the company on the company page, and to make the whole thing interlinked efficiently, right? So that it's read properly by the tools, like the pop-up that we're building. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So this is work, this is like effort that we'll always need to do, but I'm convinced that this is a strong advantage that the wiki approach has for such a complex topic, is that it's constantly negotiated and it's constantly iterated on, rather than being decided top down, like it's usually done by standards bodies and things like this. I was at WikiDataCon and I had a really interesting conversation with a computer scientist who is working with climate scientists who are looking at the history of the climate. And they have so many different ways of looking at the history of the climate, like looking at ice, looking at geomagnetic patterns. They have so many sources of information, but they need to converge it to one climate model so they better understand how things are evolving, right? And she was saying they had used this different approach with wikis, and it had been so much more effective than any other thing they had done in the past. And I think we need to have a similar approach here. And I think that's what's appealing to Simon, coming from the social sciences. It's this focus on, you know, a taxonomy, classifying things while being negotiated. I spent a bit of time explaining that, but it's quite important actually to inform the approach. Questions? So, Alex, you wanted to have some quick intro to the wiki technology itself. This is definitely something that Louis and myself struggle with for a while, and we're still struggling. The backend to the wiki. Like when you enter Amazon UK and you enter, you know, an entry and properties and values and things like this, this goes directly into a SQL data store. I don't exactly know which flavor of SQL, but one of them. And basically a database that stores triples. But then this gets immediately, and there is an API that interfaces with that directly. An API that allows you to add an item, to remove one, and so on. So that's the SQL triple store. But the advantage of using these triple store, these semantic techniques, is that you can build like crazy queries using Sparkle that really connect many different concepts together in unforeseen ways, right? Unanticipated ways. This is what's great about it. But it requires a different type of database, a graph database. And so this is where, and I'm switching page here, I'm going to a different page, Wikibase technology. And this is where what is being done is that this SQL data is getting fed directly into something called Blaze Graph. So this is, I'm explaining this here actually. This is, a Blaze Graph is a triple store. It's a database system that is built directly to store triples. But this is done using what's called the updater, and the updater has a little delay. So when you go to the query service, so I guess this is, so when you want to do a query, I don't see, oh yeah, here. If I want to do a query here, there should be, so the data you are querying from there, and we'll get to this in a second, the data you're querying from there might have some delay, which might go from like 1 second to several hours from the data you have entered in the wiki manually. Okay, so this is quite an important point because of course, if you don't know this, you might pull all your hair before the update is done.
I guess this means also then that you could never programmatically add data to the database because it has to go through the wiki layer first. Is that right?
No, because there is an API. So if you are here, so this I'm on the help Wikibase technology. So there is through the API. So that's one. Which this is the wrong link. I think it's. I'll have to correct that link. Yes. So there is an API that will have something to create a claim, and you can open it in the sandbox to even directly test things. It's really well done, actually, this part. And you can directly create claims. And the moment you make, the HTTP post request, that goes directly into the SQL database, directly. So this is instantaneous in terms of adding to the first layer of database.
So sorry, what's a claim?
Oh, okay. So yes, I jumped the gun. Let me quickly modify here. Okay. So what's a claim? So this is not really a question about the wiki data or Wikibase technology. It's more about the Wikibase modeling system, right? So a claim is a triple like this, over instance data controller, where, okay, let me get this right. So a claim is also a statement, in my understanding, where the subject of the claim is an item, the predicate of the claim is a property, and the object of the claim can either, or of the statement can either be an item or, well, it's a value, and it's either an item or it's directly like a string. It's not necessarily a full item. It's a string or it's something that has a simpler data type. So I'm not fully onto the language yet, but in the sentence I just tried to say now, I know that I'm mixing two things, two layers, and it's quite important to understand like there are two layers here. One is RDF technology, resource description framework, and another one is the interpretation of RDF, the choices that have been done in interpreting RDF when implementing Wikibase. This is two layers of choices. Don't know if that made sense or not. Oh, Alex left. Okay. So it's 2:50. Oh, he's back. Yes, he's back. Good. Alex, you're back. Great. Oops.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, so any other question at the moment? No? Okay. So I talked a little bit about namespaces. I think it's also important to explain that more precisely. So namespaces are just segmentation of information into subunits or sub-packages, if you want. I used the word module before, but sub-modules, subgroups of information. So if I go, this is the only place where I know how to show the namespaces that are existing in the wiki currently. But it's by doing a search and having this tick box. But there is basically this main namespace, the user namespace. We already saw, that if I go here, I access my page in the user namespace. That's what that means. If I was to go here, I would go to the page named PO2A in the main namespace, which does not exist, right? It makes no sense. But if I go here, you see that I'm at the community call /05 page in the main namespace. Okay, someone, you don't have access to the advanced search page? Okay, sorry, something to fix. Can you send me a message saying that you don't have that somehow, because I will not remember from the call. But that needs to be fixed. Yeah, so I just got a message. Yeah. Okay, so this is the main end user page. I already used the project. The file namespace is where the files are stored. And then you can already see duplication in the namespace. So for each of those, there is an equivalent talk page. All right. So it's again this dichotomy that I've showed you earlier, like here at the top between the page and the discussion page. So this is the community call page, and then this is the talk page for this community call page. Does that make sense?
Can you move pages between namespaces?
Sorry?
Can you move a page from one namespace to another?
Yeah, you can actually. You can move, if I take this one, project ontology, I do, okay, I've overlaid windows, so I have to move things around. I do more, and then I can move.
Okay, yeah.
But it might be a question of rights. You might not have those rights.
Yeah.
But then I can move to any of the other. I guess that's another place where I can see which namespaces exist.
Where I'm going with my question is, I'm wondering if there might be such a concept as a user's own kind of sandbox namespace where they can kind of make stuff safely to play with it, and then only migrate it to the main wiki namespace once they come.
Your entire namespace is
is a namespace.
Anyone can go, but you're welcome to go there and edit it and do exactly what you just said. Yes.
That's cool.
And you can move to to a regular wiki page, or you can move to a templating page. You can do all of that stuff. Yes.
That's really powerful, actually. Yeah.
And so I was looking at this list, right? So there is categories, there's template, there's help, there's MediaWiki, which is much more restricted because this is where you can introduce the JavaScript, etc. There's the item page, there's the properties, this is where you can do search, there's the module, there's also the gadget. Let's not get into the gadget. Well, the gadgets as well. I've showed some gadgets already, like quick presets. Yes. Okay, I feel like this is not on the agenda, but I should definitely show this because I find this gadget extremely useful. If you have Amazon UK, you have a page. If you click here, you get directly a search for all the data controllers. So all the instances of data controller, this little 3 dots, right? And same if you want to know all those that collect search data, might be just, okay, there's just 2, and so on and so on. Okay?
That's cool. Which gadget is that?
That's Easy Query, and it's activated by default for everyone because I find it so useful.
Very good.
At the top, it adds 3 other buttons at the top for an item, and this is different. It will generate a graph of all the concepts. So it's a bit small indeed. Alex is rushing forward. But if you do edit Sparkle, then you switch to the query. Now you're in the query engine. You switch to the query that it has used, and you can run it and then see it bigger and start interacting with it. Okay? And you could have direct links. This is a whole new call on the querying. Definitely something we should explore all together. Another one that's really useful is at the bottom, show derived statements. So show derived statements is basically, it's not activated by default, but it's basically doing the inverse query to seeing a page, is seeing a page, like all the pages that are linking to this one, essentially, kind of, while being aware of the ontology. So it's a bit complicated, but so I think we can say this is Alex target list, right? Amazon, we were on Amazon UK's page. It's part of Amazon Alex's target list, because if you go on Alex's target list, you can see a bunch of companies that are listed, and so that derived statements was doing the inverse, right? In this case, there is none, but yes.
Cool.
Okay. Questions? So let me say for the templates, there is very little at the moment here. I've already answered some questions, or preemptively some questions. Maybe you guys go through that and you add your own questions so I know what to add over time to the doc to help you out. The Sparkle is another part. So the Sparkle is really interesting, really useful. There is I put a link to a bunch of documentation that you can read. It's Wiki data documentation. You use the Sparkle into the query service. The query service is here. You use some prefixes that are there to more easily define the different precise items that you want to use. I'm rushing through this, I realize, because actually the best is for you not at the moment, I think, to directly do queries yourself, but instead to rely on a template that I've built. And that template is here. All right, it looks horrible, but it will basically put in a nice format the queries to be displayed on the wiki and configured very nicely. So let me explain this. And I'll explain this by, okay, going back to the template. finding what links here, basically all the pages that are using this, right? So there is a bunch of templates because the templates are interreliant, interdependent, but let me find one. Okay, so this is a good one, right? So this would be a query, and if I look at the content, it's actually much simpler, but the Sparkle templating improves it. How does it improve it? Well, it adds the prefixes that it needs. It adds the prefixes that it needs. It adds a direct link to the query, and it adds an embedded link. So an embedded link is great because you go directly, it loads it, right? It's good to have the direct link as well, because when you have the direct link, then you can end up in the query service ready to edit things right away. And you can also see it visually right away. So if you have a wiki with 4 different queries, it helps to compare things to have it like this. Okay? So I want to go a little bit over what is a query here. Okay. So this would be subject access requests that have been entered by volunteers, mostly me. So let's look at the result first. So this is my request to Finnair, for instance, right? So this is the request itself. This is the target, and this is me, the data subject. This is a researcher called Claudio Agosti, who has made requests to Amazon Italia, and he's relaying here, or I'm relaying for him, the results. So if I go here, I will see that he has put his data on Google Drive under CC0, and his target is Amazon Italia. So the idea would be to share this information between us, right? So we can quickly learn who is giving what of kind of information. Alex, you have a question?
No, I'm interested, but I don't know.
So this is how this request work. Remember, that was the goal. So this is saying select. So basically build a table where you have item label. So item label, target label, data subject label. So data subject and data subject label. So this label thing is very confusing. It's basically, this is like a little programmatic lookup. It's saying here, take the variable data subject and look up its label. Okay, you would have never guessed exactly how this worked if I didn't tell you. But this is like, take the target and go for target for its label, get the item and go for its label. And this works through that service that is defined here. Okay, and it's actually saying take up the English language label. There are ways to define automatic fallbacks. So if I type sir here on my keyboard, it's Control space, then it suggests autocompletion, and you see that this will be auto language and then English, which means if I use this and generate a link from it, then it's a hyperlink, it's a URL, but not everyone will get the same result, because if your browser is configured in Spanish, you will have, well, in this case, you would have nothing here because no Spanish label exists for that item, right? So this is saying it's the label in the language of the browser of the user. Okay, and then there is these things. So this is saying instance of interpersonal exchange, and this is saying, so this is essentially saying find me all the statements, all the claims where you have an item, instance of interpersonal or exchange around personal data. I think that's the name I used. And then where the target is the variable target and where the data subject is the variable data subject, right? But I made it optional because you see, in some cases, I was a bad boy and I didn't fill. Oops, Luca has been waiting for a while, I think. Hi, Luca. I didn't fill here the target company or the data subject person myself, but I'm still listing it here in the list. If I hadn't made it optional, then because that triple wouldn't exist, it wouldn't be added to the results. Okay? This is a quick overview of the query service, actually of how to make a Sparkle query. Let me qualify this, a tabular Sparkle query. So 2 more types of information I need to tell you is over here. You can basically take this query and make something useful for you with it. So you can go to, sorry, I have to move all the extra windows I have. That's why I'm moving my mouse around a bit. So you can generate a short URL to the result directly. Or you can copy a link to the Sparkle endpoint if you want to use this programmatically. So you develop the query in the interface, and then you extract the link to the Sparkle endpoint to be used in your own code. You can generate HTML, so you can embed this result directly in a web page. You can even go to rawgraphs.io to like generate wonderful graphs on this. It's pretty amazing. You can download the data in many different formats, or you can access code in a bunch of different languages that would allow you to basically interface with this query. We have Python, Ruby, R, and straight up URLs, okay? So this is so amazingly powerful in terms of enabling so many people to use it. So this is like what to do when you have a tabular query, but you can also define other types of queries. So let me go for, I have to close this, I have to go back a bit. So if I go back to like my bunch of different things that depend on the Sparkle template, you will see that there is a template graph that depends on the Sparkle template, and that there is a project like AdTech here that does depend. So you see a bunch of different queries that depend, that are using the Sparkle template. That's why you have this layout that's fairly nice and everything. Okay, and I see here, for instance, that let me pick this one. This one's good. So I'll jump directly to the embedded template, and ta-da! This is this gigantic graph, right? So yeah, it's time to go, Louis. So you're all welcome to go. I'll just continue on my own even because this is recorded. So if I got going with the flow, this is recorded. You can leave anytime you want, and I'll just know what I've said, and I'll send you to the right video when you have a question. It's all fine with me. I won't be offended at all. So this obviously generates a graph. So let me tell you how the Sparkle works to generate the graph. This is actually generated from a more advanced template to generate graphs. But okay. Okay. So this is where you change, where you say, I actually want you to produce a graph and not a table. Okay. And sorry. And this is how it works. It expects things. Remember, with tables, it expected the headers of the tables to be list of variables like this. But here, it expects this list to be in a very specific format, and it's all implicit. You don't know it. If you're not told, you don't know it. So it expects to have a node, a label for the node, a color for the link, a label for the target, and a label for the target. So this is creating an arrow, basically, from one node to the other, from the object node to the subject node. So it's a bit confusing that I called it object and subject. I'm sorry about that. And the color will be picked by RGB. Okay, so here, and I'm doing some interesting things here. I'm looking for all the triples, essentially, subject, predicate, object. I'm relying on the label service, all good. But the predicate itself will change and will take its value either in instance of or P28. And I don't remember what P28 is. But P28 is some other property. And so I'm looking for all the triples that have either P3 or P28 here. And where the object takes its value within this list. Okay, and for each of the value, I'll pick a different color. This is the RGB for that particular object type. Okay, so, and I'm looking for all the objects. So now I create arrows. Let me make this graph a little bit smaller. Okay, I need a little bit bigger so that I have enough. Right, so now I have triples and I get arrows from object to subject. This is how I build it. I make the color dependent on the objects, and I generate a bunch of triples. A bunch, not triples, a bunch of tuples here that tell how to construct the graph. And with values, I basically run all of those pairs through all of those pairs, all of those singletons through all of those singletons, and I take all the combinations and I find all the, and I create all the arrows from this. Okay? This is how to do a general graph query. It's obviously quite complex, but it's really amazingly powerful. And I think what is likely to happen over time is that we see there are canonical, useful ways to look at the database, and we make those templates. So it becomes a lot easier. For instance, you might want to say like all the healthcare providers and their data providers in Italy. And then that just becomes, you know, a template you call with very few parameters, and that generates this graph for you. But if you wanted to call the same all in Europe, it would you just change one parameter, and then you call this very simple template, and you get all of that. Are there questions on this?
No question, but that is really powerful. Yeah, thanks for showing us that.
Yeah, it's going to be a call in itself, an entire page / subpages of information and all of that, but it's amazingly powerful. And I think if we manage to collaborate on the database, we can make such rich presentations that it's so convincing very quickly.
Actually, I have a question. Given that you could potentially, as you showed us, use this as essentially the data layer of an application, what's your kind of expectations you want to set with people about doing that? Like, does your service run 24/7? Do you do backups? Those kind of things. Do you want people to only put certain types of data on there? That kind of thing.
Good question. Louis, do you want to respond on the technical aspects of what we do right now on backups? You're muted, yeah.
So on my side, okay, for the machine, I'm doing something really simple. I have an absolutely wonderful shell script with installing the extensions and the images and all of that I need to rebuild, okay? And I'm doing a backup of the database, the backup of the folders on Wikidata, okay, but precisely the images folder. And what else? And the authentication file. Okay, there is a file with 2 keys inside. And at home, I am playing with the fact that I have a local volumes. You know, you have, with Docker, you can have a volume that you have on your machine, but in the Docker, blah, 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 blah. But I really prefer the fact that I can deploy, redeploy my baby, my Wikidata, in few minutes from the database, the extensions file, and my script. It's very simple. When you restart the maintenance.update, is scanning all your your MySQL database, and is doing what is required to do on the WDQS, on the query service side, and filling the Elasticsearch database. And I don't know exactly what happened, but c'est parfait.
So the
and I am using the Docker image. Voilà.
Yes,
the Docker image and my Docker compose.yml, YML is pretty advanced. But
right.
if people want, I can share a few files. And
so there are 2 questions, Alex. One question is on the data, and one question is on resetting up everything. Right? Resetting up everything so that it can run. So resetting up everything is definitely dependent on Louis right now, because there is a custom YAML and it's still messy. Wikibase is still very messy to set up. Like, you would not be able to do it yourself.
The main problem with Docker, and when you put a Docker in production that has been made by developer to play locally, is that you need to think about the network inside of the Docker network and the real network outside. And in the Docker compose, when you put an alias to the machine, it will not have a look on the real DNS. So it can be a bit messy when you define, for example, when you configure, okay, a service, a Docker container, and claim that you are Toto.com, okay? Inside of the Docker network, you will have the IP of the Docker network, but outside, you must have the real IP. It's totally messy, but I can give you the magic Docker compose and explain the content of it.
But this is one layer, and it answers one type of worry. The worry about the data being lost, so that is okay. But because there is the backups, there is everything, but it would require a lot of work for Louis to reinstate.
The data would be safe, but it might be a while before you actually can.
Right. Ideally, you feel in such control that, I mean, the data is open. So this is ideally you would be able to take your own copy and instantiate your own wiki and collaborate this way, and this is great. But it would take too much work to be set up. It's not reasonable to do this at the moment. Although things are evolving. So now there's
maybe some sort of cron job or something set up that dumps the triple stores out in some form somewhere.
I'll get to that in a second. So ideally, so what I would like to have is that everyone is able to start their own Wikibase and take the data from the central one into their own Wikibase. And this is going to be facilitated by this service called WB Stack, where you can start your own instance, like it's managed as a service. Mm-hmm. It would still require work, but we could make that work reduced more. But indeed, in terms of the data and reusing the data, the next step is to do a dump, like you just said. Yeah. And others have asked for that already. This is this export feature that exists on Wikidata, so it must not be that hard. It must just be a question of like activating it for us. But we haven't done it yet. So if it's really urgent, if it's really a crucial point for you, we can do it. If it's a one-time export, we can do it. If it's having a regular thing, I mean, dump to GitHub. We should be able to do that.
I mean, I think for me, it's just a bit more about confidence. The more I invest in putting data into this platform, the more I'm wanting to know it's safe. You know?
Certainly, what you can do manually is, or even programmatically, so do it manually first, is like a select star. Just select all the triples to pull out, right? That's going to die out basically because it's too many at the moment already. Yeah. But you can do it programmatically. So you go through the path I just showed, select star, you extract the Python code or whatever code you feel comfortable with, you modify it a little bit, and then you run that on a regular basis yourself.
Yeah.
Share that code with others because others have asked it already. So
in terms of the backups you are doing currently, is that nightly or weekly or what?
Louis?
Yeah.
You remuted yourself.
Voilà. So me, I'm doing twice a day a MySQL dump. It's really easy. A MySQL dump, Docker copy, and boom, it's done.
Cool. And yes, if you do from the query service, like I said with the select star, you're doing from the second database, not the first, right?
And
so there's you're doing it from the triple store, which doesn't store the history of contributions, for instance, doesn't store the wiki pages themselves. It just stores the data.
I see.
And also something that, in my humble opinion, is really important, and you cannot put anything in production if you don't have a dev platform. So me, what I do on my side is that I have my domain name, okay, of my company, and I grab the dump of the MySQL. I replace everywhere the domain name of Paul Olivier with mine on all the configuration, so the links are okay, and I rebuild on my dev from the last backup. Okay, yeah, so I'm doing the backup, take the data inside of the SQL file, inside of the dump SQL file, I replace the domain name, and what else? On the Docker compose, I replace the domain name, and on the PHP file, the configuration files for Wikidata, if there is a domain name, I also replace.
Yeah.
And so, very important also is the mail. So me on my side, last time, I don't understand why, there is a problem with the SMTP. So I had to configure the mail extension using Gmail. It worked without any problem with Gmail. I didn't test with other huge SMTP services, but with my SMTP, the standard one, the good one, normally it should work, and it does not. No idea why.
Yeah, but I think I understand Alex's worry, which is more about like, is my work safe? And if the
Alex, never.
If the organization goes down, can I start again from where I was, essentially?
I think now, if I don't take my PC with the HDD rubbish file, rubbish disk, if we are using the magic, well, we are using a very, very beautiful cloud container.
Yeah, don't get him
Elle est très jolie, la machine virtuelle. It's a very nice machine. I need something like 12 minutes to rebuild everything.
Okay.
If I am at home, it's 1 hour and 12 minutes.
Okay. So definitely something we need to work on because it will build trust, it will increase trust. But so far we're flying on building trust some other way than that. Okay, this is getting long, but it's okay for me. I'm okay with anyone leaving at any time again.
Moi, il faut que j'y aille parce que j'ai une...
All right.
Voilà, je vous embrasse très fort.
Thanks for being
Have a sweet night, guys.
So,
and Alex, if you have a question, contact me. Huh? I am cleaning right now my GitLab account, so I may put it in public or almost. I don't know yet, but I have rewrite the way that I am working. Oh, sorry, I cannot finish my sentences, but
No
voilà.
worries.
Have a nice day.
The best way to contact you, is that via the Slack or one of the other channels? Or?
I have everything. I am everywhere.
Okay.
I am on the Signal,
more,
on the WhatsApp, on the voilà.
on the
Okay.
Telegram. Yeah.
Everything. Take care. See you guys.
Thanks. So there was a question about merging. So let me, bye Louis. I want to just show you if we wanted to merge, this is how we would do it, right? So Q2287, if we wanted to merge with another item, we would enter Q something else. I won't do it obviously because this is Amazon. This is we shouldn't touch. But anyway, at the moment that doesn't work. There is a bug somewhere, and we've filed a bug report with the Wikimedia Foundation, or Wikimedia Germany, whatever. It used to work. It doesn't anymore. I don't know why.
So is that merge, that's a base feature of Wikibase, or is that some gadget?
No, it's a gadget, exactly.
Okay.
That's a gadget.
Cool. Well, let us know when that's working again, because also with that thing that you can't really delete stuff, it's easy to end up with rogue pages once you've created.
Yes. So what I've been doing is just adding obsolete in the text to just make it clear some other way.
Makes sense. But this will become more of an issue as we consolidate entries from different companies into a common ontology. You know, what this company calls location data, this company calls geolocation history or whatever.
Right.
Merge them. So
yeah. So, but I think it can also become easier to detect as we consolidate the ontology. Yeah. Like if we say, well, when you have company collects blah, and if we say blah must be of an instance of either foo1, foo2, or foo3, then we have an easier time finding those collisions because they're all either foo1, foo2, or foo3. Like it's
the right type. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're that's what I really like is we're introducing a typing system progressively that makes sense for our purpose and that is constantly renegotiated. But that helps us.
Yeah. Would those types just be sort of pages or items, and then everything else is a child or an instance or subclass or something of that item? Or
so there is actually no such thing as a type. I think we shouldn't have any such thing as a type, but we should have triples, and the existence of a particular snack. This is a new word, but of a particular snack amounts in a way to a type. Or a trait, if you are familiar with that term. And a snack in this language here, a snack is, so remember there was subject, predicate, object in a triple?
Yeah.
A snack is predicate object.
Okay.
Right? So Amazon UK, that's the item, that's the subject, instance of data controller. Amazon Italy, instance of data controller. So instance of data controller, that snack can be attached to many different subjects, and it amounts to a type.
I see.
But I used to have an item for ad tech company and ad tech product. So those two items, and I used it with instance of ad tech company or instance of ad tech product, right? Now I've changed. I start to do instance of company, instance of product, but concerns ad tech. Right, and concerns ad tech becomes its own snack and or its own trait, and it's in the intersection that we can start building interesting stuff.
I see. Yeah.
So that it's that is the amazing thing. It's that it's really bottom up, flexible, and it's essentially a typing system. So it's like programming, but together and in an evolving way, and we don't have those rigid systems that we can't make evolve.
Yeah, I understand that conceptually. I am not quite totally clear yet on how we're going to collaboratively do that in practice, but I understand the theory.
Yeah, I have ideas there, and I'm really interested in exploring that. So that's where I want to put most of my attention. What is currently being done on Wikidata is basically talk about it. Instead of having rigid rules, or instead of having having so rigid rules or systems. They have policies that they negotiate, that they talk about. The theories that they respect each other and they talk. Probably some who are listening or will be listening will be laughing, but they've policies they talk about, they discuss, they grow organically on what can be done. And something I didn't say is like the namespacing is really important for another aspect, which is that you can grant rights, you can package rights into roles on a namespace per namespace basis. Right, so this is a way to like segment things. So in my mind, we could have like a legal namespace where legal experts would come and would provide like cutting edge legal expertise, knowing that fools like us couldn't go in and modify things, right? But they would have the certainty that this is consolidated among experts. And what's an expert? Well, it will be to that subgroup to define and to agree on norms and whatever.
I like that model.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have all the answers, but I know that this software is pretty good at making things emerge in a different way, right? Okay, essentially, one more thing I want to show is the quick statement thing. So, quick statement is a tool that is installed and that is originally developed for Wikidata. So it's a quick way to add data from essentially a CSV.
Mm-hmm.
So not everything works here, but the core part works. So I start a new batch and I go back and I basically copy paste this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this would say, just to explain it to you, this would say, this here kind of specifies the type of what is this line saying.
Mm-hmm.
This line is saying, I have company 1, that's going to be the label in English.
Mm-hmm.
P3 is instance of data controller, and contact email is going to be this. And it starts with a comma because there is no Q something here. It's a new company that doesn't exist yet.
That means it will be assigned, yeah?
It will be assigned, exactly.
Why the triple quotes?
Yeah, so that is the messed up thing with this software. It's like it's when triple quotes, when single quotes. It's a bit complex. I can't explain you. I think there is no full logic because you see there is no quote here. The labels are treated differently, like from what might be a string or might be an item. I don't exactly know. I just know this works. And the doc on Wikidata is not completely clear, and I've tried improving it myself, but it's just not great. But so that's why I would suggest if people find it useful, do please share the equivalent of that, because so others can know, right? And obviously, the intent here would be to import, and just so everyone has it and it's like clear for everyone, I will not import here. If you click the button, you're not importing yet, but instead it's checking what it's going to do.
Oh, nice.
Okay. And so this is what it would do here. It would create an item with this label and this contact email. Okay, it's telling you, so you can check before actually running it in the background or running. And just even in their retelling here of what they understood of what you want to do, it's inconsistent because this will work. It will add, I hope this will work. I hope I didn't mess up and I'm recording now something I'll point people to. But this is saying, well, I'll use this as a label in English, and this is saying I'll use this string as the contact email.
Mm-hmm.
But it's inconsistent in the way it's retelling you. I'll have a single quote here, and I have no quote there.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously, I'm not running it because I don't want to add empty new items that I would have to delete afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And this will generate, okay, don't use it for thousands of entries, but for small changes, that can work really well. And so you can do your, your query to, we could start cleaning the database by having queries that detect problems for us, and then saving the queries, and then from the query work a little bit with a spreadsheet editor to generate the CSV we need to import into the quick statements. This is the shortest programmatic way at the moment, but we could improve on all of this fairly quickly.
Is there some way to do update statements with this as well as create?
Yes. So if you have the QID, and it's actually a problem to get the QID, this will make sense to you over time. But if you have the QID, then it interprets the thing as update that statement.
Oh, I see. Cool. So you just have a row in that CSV that for an existing item. Nice.
And something I didn't say here is okay. Let me go back. Let me go back here, right? So you could have I think it's qual 34, right? Actually, if I do it like this, I think it's like that. I've just added this guy, right? Mm-hmm. And Q12, let's say, this is just random. Mm-hmm. So this would complexify a little bit the input. It would say, take property 3 and create a statement pointing to value Q96, and then qualify it with property 34 pointing to ID 12. So I didn't explain what qualifiers are, but you used them already, Alex. Yeah, so this would specify a tiny bit the relationship on that statement. Yeah. And the column called 34 actually points to the previous property. So it's, if you think about it, how does it reason? What does it know about what is this a qualifier to? Well, it's the previous property that appears.
Okay. So does that actually get the data from the previous item's qualifier and put it into the next field? Or?
No. So when it reads Q12 qual 34, it looks to the left. What is the previous statement I've been asked to create? And it's going to be a qualifier for that statement.
Oh, I see.
And the previous statement, it just happens to be the previous entry here, because there could be many qualifiers, right? Here there's just one. So it looks here, here, P3Q96, that's a snack that was associated to this row where I created a new item. So that's the statement that needs qualifying.
Okay.
Right? And I was saying this because partly as an answer to your question, if this thing already exists, if let's say it's already in the database, right? Mm-hmm. Then it will find it again and it will qualify it. So it will update the statement by qualifying it.
Okay.
It will not generate a second statement with that qualifier.
Okay. Yeah, I mostly follow that. One thing I'm wondering then, is it possible to get a textual value from an existing property and kind of maybe put that somewhere else? Because one of my use cases is I would like to move things that I've put into comment field into.
Yeah, exactly. So let's imagine you were starting from scratch, just to make sure we understand, right? So you would have this big table here where you would have instance of data controller, collect this item, and then qualify, like comment with this value, right? This is how you would have done the update. What you would like to do is to actually change that first line from saying comment to maybe saying policy excerpt or something, another qualifier.
Yeah.
So from a quick statement point of view, it just amounts to changing this entry here, like which ID it uses, right? Which ID it uses to qualify, which property ID it uses to qualify, right? But now we're stuck with this database that is currently populated. So the right way to do it is to duplicate information in the database. And that means use a query to pull the data with a tabular query into a format where we can just use it back into quick statements with a slight modification.
I see, yeah. So you do actually have to specify the data as literals in here, and you would do that by exporting it first.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's clear to me that you could have something like, this, I want to change it to, okay, where is it? I want to change it to that, where instead of using qualifier 34, I use qualifier 35.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what you want to do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And what we should have is the tool that allows us to enter those two lines essentially, and just run it, and it does the transfer.
Yeah.
As far as I know, that tool does not exist in the Wikidata ecosystem.
So for now, you've got to extract the data and then re-import it.
Yeah, but it should be, or we could run item per item and do more like deeper, probing into each item and changing one item at a time. But clearly, this is a way like we could vastly improve our interaction with our own Wikibase instance, but we could make it beneficial to the entire Wikidata community.
Yeah.
And hopefully people will pick up on our way to do things and will improve it.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I see there's like vast opportunities for improving the interaction.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm at the end of what I wanted to say. I'm sorry it took a long time.
Saturation point now, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm very glad this was recorded because I can send people to it in the future. Oh no. I think Marie-Pierre added some all right, so other cool stuff. So maybe Marie-Pierre, you can add by message if you want to tell me about it, or if I, about this tool, or so this is another tool, and I think I should probably, I should certainly trust you, and I will install it. I'm not sure what it does, but there is a hint of show the description of items properties when hovering them. Yes, that sounds good. That would require us to put more properties, more description for objects, which we haven't been doing so far.
If you try some of the companies I've been doing, I think they've got descriptions.
Yeah, I think that's good to have, because I haven't done it because I had a good complete picture of what was in the database, but over time we'll lose that, and so the description is what will keep it functioning for us, the textual description. So it sounds like a really good idea that we install this extension or this gadget so that we can be nudged into using that. Okay, thank you for everyone who stayed. Thank you for everyone who watched live on Twitter. And thank you for everyone who watches in the future. If you have ideas on what would be good for a next call, you can go here and edit and add for the agenda. It's not necessarily going to be for agenda 06 because I might do, I might segment the agenda, the calls for different audiences. I kind of want to have a community call for journalists on how to use this for investigations. That would vastly increase the utility very quickly. And probably they don't want to be swamped with technical details, so I have to partition the agenda. But this is the best way to get started. If anyone wants to add anything, you're more than welcome to do that now.
I'd just say thank you very much for organizing this. For me, as someone who's using the wiki every couple of days, it's really, really useful just to give me a bit more practical skills. And where I don't have practical skills, at least now I know what the potential is and know where I can try and learn things. So thank you.
I should have done it earlier, but we've been very busy with the Loloton investigation, which is pretty exciting, as you can imagine. Thank you. All right. Then by then I'll try to close down the streaming and everything. Bye on Twitter and etc. And see you on the wiki and other channels. Bye.
Thanks, Paul. Bye.